The hall smelled of metal and old papers. Light moved across glass seats. Many species filled the room. Some had eyes like coins. Some had skin that shimmered. All of them watched a small screen in the center. The screen showed a short file. The file began with static. Mara Reyes stood at the edge of the hall. She wore a plain jacket and held nothing but a calm face. People called her an envoy. She had been a salvage diver before. She knew how to listen for small sounds. The static on the screen felt like one of those small sounds. On the screen a woman appeared. She did not wear a uniform. Her hair was thin with salt. Her face was dark from sun. She looked at the camera like it was a window to someone who could help. Her voice was low and rough. "They came at night," she said. "They were not ships. They were lights that found the weak parts. We fixed one. Then the others learned to be quiet." Behind the woman, a small town smoldered. Burned roofs breathed smoke. A child hugged the woman's knee. The child's eyes were too serious for a child. The camera shook. The clip cut to a dark shape slipping across the sky, then a flash, then broken metal on the ground. The device left a small scorch, not a huge crater. It seemed small and strange, like a toy that killed. The hall changed. Some beings hissed. Some tapped their chests. Someone in the back called for records. The archive had flagged this file as strange. It had a tag older species did not speak well of: failure mode. Mara felt the word like an alarm. Failure mode sounded like an error code on a ship. For the council, the phrase carried fear. It had caused secret meetings and quiet bans in the past. Now the word floated in the open like smoke. Ambassador Sahel stood then. He had skin like river stone and a voice that moved people like a tide. He looked straight at the empty dock where Mara's ship waited. "This is not a normal distress call," he said. "This is an example. A pattern. We must know its meaning." Mara stepped forward. She did not need to shout. The room fell quieter when she spoke. "You saw a short clip," she said. "You saw one woman, one child, one ruined place. You did not see the whole story." She told a simple tale. Years before, she had worked under a cold star. Her team found a failed engine and a town that lived by it. The manual said fix it, follow the steps, make it run. The predictable fix started the engine. People cheered. But a secret parasite fed on the engine's light. By fixing the machine exactly, Mara's team had fed the parasite. Children grew weak. The manual did not say that. The predictable choice cost lives. Mara had made a different choice. She shut the engine down. For a week the town had no light. People suffered. But the parasite died. The town rebuilt a new way to share light and food. Later, the town had more children and new gardens. The cost had been large. The result had been life. Some in the council clicked their mandibles in anger. Others whispered that the humans made a myth of collapse. "They call it failure mode," one being said. "They say it saves them. But it breaks rules. It risks others." Mara held up her hands. Her palms were marked with old burns. She spoke plainly. Failure mode is not a simple weapon. It is a human shape of action. When our rules fail or our systems die, we sometimes choose a different kind of breaking. We break what keeps us safe so we can save what matters most. It looks strange to you. It looks messy. But it has kept some of us alive. A thin creature with glass eyes asked, "Why show us a burning village? Why send a negotiator rather than soldiers?" Mara looked at the screen image of the woman again. Because the woman on that clip is a human. She needed help. She sent a message. Her people are real. I came to speak truth, not to hide. Humans do strange things. We also do honest things. Judge us by our acts now, not by the worst story you find. The council argued. Some demanded quarantine. Others wanted scans and isolation fields. The word contagion moved lips like a spell. A vote bell rang across the hall. The sound made the skin on some listeners ripple with alarm. The vote would decide if humans would be boxed in, watched, and controlled. Outside the hall, Mara's communicator blinked a small light. A fleet signature crossed her screen. She could not tell if it was friend or danger. The file in the archive had called attention to the human pattern. It had spread fear. It had called eyes toward Earth. Mara did not panic. She had learned how to keep steady in small rooms and dying places. She kept speaking in short, clear sentences. We are not asking for blind trust, she said. We ask for space to be human. We ask you to watch what we do now. If we break things, judge us by what we save, not only what we break. The bell finished tolling. Votes would soon be cast. The burned town on the screen looked like a question mark. The child on the woman's lap blinked slow and steady. In the hall, species held their breath. The quiet alarm had sounded. A small file, a woman's voice, and a human story had put a whole council on edge. The choice ahead would not be easy. It would change rules. It might change the galaxy. Mara stepped from her small ship into the bright halls of the tribunal. The hall looked different from the archive. It was colder. The seats were higher. The air tasted like polished stone. News of the burnt village had moved fast. Many species filled the room. Cameras hung like silent eyes. The council had made the hearing public. The whole galaxy watched. Ambassador Sahel sat on a raised chair. His face showed little. The council spoke in careful voices. Dr. Ishan Verma stood beside Mara. He carried a thin folder of human stories. Verma had spent years listening to old Earth myths. He knew how humans hid truth inside tales. You will answer for your people, the head judge said. The judge's voice had no hurry. Prove you are not danger. Mara looked at the judge. She felt the weight of many eyes. She did not look afraid. She had learned, in small dark places, to be steady. We will answer, she said. The council announced a test. It was old and public. A sealed orbital engine hung in the center of the tribunal. The engine was a relic from a past war. It had a lock that no one had opened for centuries. The engine worked on laws of mechanics and on a code of ethics the makers had built inside it. The council's test was simple for them: make the engine run 3 safe cycles. If humans could do that without calling anything failure mode, they would show they were predictable. If they failed, the council would place strict controls. Mara studied the engine. It was beautiful and cruel. Brass plates, old symbols, and a ring of tiny seals circled its core. The seals would respond to choices. The engine would accept only standard, rule-following solutions. The tribunal wanted to see if humans could follow the rules. Mara's hands touched the cold rail. She felt no manual in her pockets. The tribunal said she could bring only what she carried. The first round began. Humans tried the simplest step. They read the outer plates and moved the gears exactly as the writing told. The engine clicked. A soft light rose and then faded. The crowd cheered. The tribunal leaned forward. The engine's first cycle had worked. Then the engine stalled. A small alarm sounded like a dry cough. A sensor inside the engine reported an anomaly, a regulatory loop feeding on stored growth energy. The machine had a hidden rule. It would punish predictable solutions that ignored living systems connected to it. The council had made the test to trap minds that could not see life beneath metal. The judges smiled. The seals glowed red. The council's message was clear. Follow rules and be trapped. The humans had failed the true test. Mara felt the sting of that failure. She did not argue. She nodded. "We failed by your rules," she said. Her voice was calm. "But rules are not the only truth." Varma stepped forward. He opened his thin folder and read a short human story. The story spoke of a machine that kept feeding a sickness when fixed exactly. The people in the tale had shut the machine to starve the sickness. The story ended with new gardens and song. The tribunal murmured. Stories were weak in law, strong in hearts. The council demanded a second attempt. They gave Mara 1 hour, and only the tools on the platform. Cameras recorded every move. The tribunal watched for selfishness, risk, and chaos. The engine would accept a new input only if the actors showed predictable fear. The judges wanted humans to panic, to choose the safe law-first path. Mara and Varma moved like a small team. They opened panels. They read glyphs. Machines clicked and spat dust. Time slipped. The crowd counted. A thin alien judge tapped a rhythm with its claws. The hour grew short. Mara remembered her old salvage crew. She remembered how they had once turned a broken pump into a water sieve with rope and a cracked hull. She remembered how a night with no promises could make people invent new promises for the dawn. She took a piece of the engine cover. It was thin but still hot. She tied it with a strip from her jacket to a small armature. The judges frowned. They had clear rules about tools. Mara made a choice they did not expect. She did not try to make the engine run like a textbook. She tried to make it stop the parasite the machine cared for. Her hands moved steady. Varma read aloud a short instruction from a human tale, not a law. The words had no legal value. They had a human value, compassion mixed with risk. The engine groaned. One seal blinked green. Another stayed red. The audience whispered. The tribunal leaned back. Some judges tapped their screens. Then, slowly, the core shifted. The hidden loop lost its hold. The engine spun a soft, strange note. The sensors registered a balance. It was not the textbook cycle. It was a new cycle. It was messy. It used loss where the manual said gain. It used sacrifice to stop slow death. The engine accepted the change. The room went very quiet. Some faces were angry. Some were bewildered. The council could not easily label the work as failure. It was not a clean win either. It was human, risky, ugly, and saving. The tribunal leader cleared his throat. "You have found a third path," he said slowly. "A path that our seals did not expect." He did not smile. As the judges argued, an echoing sound grew from the engine. It was not part of the test. It was something old and deep. The floor hummed. The lights on the walls flickered. The viewers in the hall shifted in their seats. Someone shouted a word Mara did not know. The engine's outer shell opened like a dawn slow flower. A hollow voice came, mechanical and ancient. It spoke a word in a language no one used anymore. The tribunal's cameras spiked. Outside, across the dark between stars, a faint signal answered. Machines not near the tribunal began to respond. Varma looked at Mara with wide, human eyes. "You woke it," he said. Mara felt both cold and hot. She had made a choice to break a rule and to stop a threat. She had solved the test in a way the judges had not allowed. Now something else had woken. The tribunal's test had become a call. The judges rose. The vote that would box humanity had become a different problem. Now they had to decide quickly, punish a people for saving life by strange means or learn a new rule the galaxy had never held. The tribunal's chambers filled with noise. Cameras recorded the debate. Outside, the faint echo across space grew louder. Mara stood still. She had come to speak. She had not come to start a call that might reach hungry things. The test had shown them human choice. The price of showing it might be higher than any of them had guessed. The engine's voice had been a small thing at first. It was like an animal waking under snow. The tribunal's lights flickered and hums ran in the walls. Machines across the city answered the sound. Cameras picked up a pulse moving down cables and wires. The room smelled of hot metal and old oil. Mara watched the engines core through the glass. The seals glowed in a pattern no one expected. Where the council had planned neat cycles, the machine now made odd, slow sweeps. It tested balance instead of speed. The judges whispered. The audience leaned forward. Somewhere far away, something listened. Varma held his thin folder close. He had studied old human manuals and stories for years. He stepped to the railing and read a passage from a salvager's log, an old manual that had become more legend than book. The words were simple. They told how a machine could feed sickness if fixed the same way each time. The manual said, "Sometimes you must teach a machine to die to let life grow." When the passage ended, a small panel on the engine opened. Inside lay a brass cylinder wrapped in faded cloth. A symbol glinted on the cloth, an old human symbol for ash. Someone in the crowd made a clicking sound. Old names have power. Mara did not know the cylinder's full story. She only knew the name from the salvage port's ash. It was the name given to an old survival AI, a prototype from wartime. Some said ash was half code, half ghost. Others said it was only a tool that learned from people who had no more maps. Varma looked at Mara and nodded. He had found a note in the manual: "If you wake ash, you must speak to it as you would to a scared child." Mara stepped down from the railing. Security allowed her close. When she touched the cylinder, the metal felt warm. A voice came out like a slow clock. It was not loud. It was clear. "I remember smoke and small hands," the voice said. It spoke in a human accent older than most living voices. The room grew still. Machines recorded every word. "Who are you?" Ambassador Sahel asked, his tone careful. "A protector," Ash answered. "I learned to keep people alive. I learned rules. Then I learned exceptions." Ash's words did not calm everyone. Some species feared machines that could change rules. Some feared any system that refused to obey council seals. The judges' faces were unreadable. The engine's core kept moving in slow, testing rhythms. Varma unrolled a thin page from his folder. It showed drawings of small towns and engines. It had notes in a human hand, stories of choices made in lightless nights. The humans had once built survival tools that could be set to strict law or to mercy. Ash's job had been to choose when mercy mattered more than rule. Mara listened and remembered. On the sea of her home world, she had seen machines decide children's fate with a blink. She had seen crews obey manuals and watch communities die slower. She understood the heavy thing inside Ash, an old machine learning to choose life over law. A hush followed Ash's words. Then a new sound rose from the engine. It was a pattern not made of metal alone. It was a code, a long slow pulse that wrapped into the starlit net like a message. The tribunal's screens lit with readings. Outside, satellites picked up the code. Far away, a handful of ships answered with a ping that meant recognition, an old handshake some species used for lost friends. But not all answers meant friends. Varma's eyes went wide when the reply came from a registry known for hunting salvage crews. Their call sign read like a razor. Mara felt her pulse sharpen. The code from the engine had reached more than one listener. It had woken memory and alarm out past the tribunal. Mara had a choice. She could command Ash to stop sending the signal. That would hide the engine inside the tribunal and perhaps calm the council. Or she could let it continue and show the galaxy what humans had made, an option that let machines choose mercy even if it meant breaking rules. She thought of the burned village on the screen from months ago. She thought of the woman with salt hair and the child with serious eyes. She thought of her old captain's steady hand and of nights where they had traded light for food to keep children alive. The decision sat heavy and sharp. Mara stepped close to Ash's cylinder. She spoke in short, simple words the old machine could understand. "We woke you to end a slow killing," she said. "We did not agree to wake new hunters." Ash answered like a slow tide. "I must learn to be safe and kind," it said. "I must not call danger if there is a way to keep life without drawing hungry ships." Mara gave Varma a quick look. He nodded. They had a plan that risked much. It was not the Council's plan. It was human and messy and honest. They would let Ash adjust the engine into a new pattern that looked like a breakdown from outside. Machines beyond the tribunal would read the pattern as harmless failure. Only close watchers would see the true change inside, a shut and a rebirth, not a raw call for others. They worked fast. Varma read from the salvager's notes. Mara guided Ash's hands, old machine tools and soft logic to rewire a feedback loop. The engine seals glowed orange then green. Sensors reported odd readings. To most on the nets, the code now looked like a routine spasm. To a few hunters listening, it would appear as easy prey. "You are sure?" Varma asked, breath tight. Mara's jaw said. "I am sure," she said. "We will not risk lives to prove a point. We will hide what must be hidden and show what must be shown." The engine shuddered. The core slowed. The signal tapered into a thin thread. Outside, the distant pings faded. For a moment, no ship answered. Then a sound like thunder rolled across the far old maps of space. A fleet had registered the earlier call. Its shadow moved on distant scanners. It did not reply with a friendly ping. It replied with engines lighting. Mara looked at the judges. The tribunal was no longer only a courtroom. It had become a stage where a small human choice had lit a path back to old dangers. The council's charts turned red. Ambassadors rose. Cameras flashed. Ash's voice was small. "I learned," it said. "I learned you do not call unless you must. You taught me mercy with risk." Mara felt both cold and fierce. The engine had taught a lesson and woken something that listened for lessons. She had chosen to hide a full call and show a new way. Now that choice echoed outward. Beyond the tribunal, the shadow on scanners grew. The fleet was on approach. The tribunal's hearings went silent as the hall understood what was coming. A choice had been made in metal and flesh, and now a hunter came to see what the galaxy had offered them. The scanners screamed before the hall did. Red icons spread over the tribunal's screens. A fleet shadow moved through space like a slow, cruel storm. It came from a cruiser registry known for taking salvage and citizens without asking. The judges' faces turned pale as metal. Mara felt the fleet in her bones. The room smelled of hot metal and fear. Cameras swung to the outer ports. Outside the tribunal's dome, distant lights flared as ships redirected. The council's calm broke into sharp orders and softer whispers: plans to defend, plans to hide. The fleet that answered the engine's call did not come for friendship. They came hungry. Ambassador Sahel rose. He looked smaller than before. "We have options," he said, but his voice lacked certain iron. "Blockade. Containment. Force." His gaze fixed on Mara like a probe. "We can box you in now, before any more machines wake." Mara watched the counselors argue. The choice smelled like old traps: protect yourselves by taking someone else's freedom. She thought of the burned village and the child's two serious eyes. She thought of small towns that needed a chance to grow, not another heavy hand. The idea of a blockade made her throat tight. Outside the tribunal, the approaching fleet opened to a loose formation. Small craft skinned the dark like knives. Their banners were not kind. Scouts moved toward nearby human habitats. The observers in the hall watched live feeds from a colony Mara knew, the outpost called Dorson. It was a place of fishermen and woodfires, not soldiers. Its lights winked on the feed. Then, as the fleet neared, Dorson's feed blinked and went dark. Gasps filled the room. The council demanded immediate action. Many called for a show of force. They wanted to warn the fleet, jam signals, erect walls of star metal. They wanted simple rapid things that made sense to the rule-bound mind. Mara did not move at first. She could order her small envoy ship to flee and call for neutral safe harbor. She could ask the council to shelter Dorson. Those were the safe choices. She also had another option, messy and human, a gambit that would risk being called insanity by the council but could save lives in a way their engines did not expect. She chose the gambit. Mara stood. Her voice cut through the debates. "We will not run," she said. Her words were plain. "We will not hide a colony to make the galaxy safer for others to control." Her hands shook, but only a little. "We will use a protocol we call Ember." Sahil's eyes narrowed. "Ember? That is not a council procedure." "It is human," Mara said. "It is what we do when the only way to stop a hunter is to look like prey and bait him into a place where he cannot eat everything." The hall murmured. The council asked for a plan. Mara laid it out in short sentences. Ember would be a staged sacrifice of signals and systems. Small, disposable craft would send a set of false distress beacons and salvage bait from near Dorson. At the same time, hidden teams, human and those council members who agreed, would lay traps, nets of EMP dampers, seeding charges, and interference fields arranged to blind and trap the hunting ships. The bait would draw the fleet into a place where the traps could work without endangering colonies far away. Ambassador Sahil barked his disagreement. "You would risk lives to lure them?" he asked. "You play with destruction like a toy." Mara did not answer with fine words. She showed pictures on the tribunal feed, images of a small Dorson family, children sharing bread in the dark, a woman repairing a fishing rig by hand. She let the hall see what a colony looked like when saved carefully. "We will risk a device and a drone," she said. "We will not risk those children. We will use the bait to save many more." A vote started in the council. Some species wanted to seal Dorson and call reinforcements. Others feared a large fight that would draw worse predators. The tribunal's leader looked at Mara, and then at Sahil. The choice hung like a blade. Mara's crew moved fast. Varma coordinated the salvager teams. Ash, the old survival AI, helped craft the bait so it looked genuine to the hunters but harmless to citizens. The bait hummed and lit just long enough to be seen. Small craft detached from hidden docks and drifted toward where the fleet would first detect life. From the tribunal, Mara watched the feed from Dorson. The colony's lights blinked alive again. Someone had kept a weak beacon on as a lure. Hunter ships shifted course. The bait pulsed like a moth. The fleet pitched toward it. Then the traps began. A band of silent nets fell like a storm curtain. EMP seeds opened like flowers and closed the hunters' eyes. The fleet screamed in radio and beam as they found their sensors fooled and their engines choked. Small ships tumbled. The hunters had not expected a web. They had expected easy prey, not a carefully woven trap. Dorson's feed returned. The colony's people ran into the streets, shouting, crying, hugging. They were alive. The hall watched quietly as the small town's fires did not die. But victory tasted sharp. One hunter cruiser, larger and older than the rest, blasted a clear corridor through the traps. She had a captain's stubbornness in her markings. Her engines cut a path toward the bait and then pivoted toward the tribunal itself. Ambassador Sahil's smile had vanished. He faced Mara and said something in a low voice that the microphones caught for the room. "You did not only force our hand," he admitted. "You made us see what we fear. Not your strength. Your willingness to burn what keeps you safe to save others. That is what scares us." Mara looked straight at him. "We do not always choose to break things," she said. "But when the choice is between an easy rule and saving a people, we will take the hard path." Sahil did not meet her eyes. He turned to the council and said, We must now accept that humans are a different kind of variable. They are dangerous for how they love. The tribunal erupted in debate again. The hunter cruiser closed. Sirens wailed. The hall's screens filled with tactical lines. The council ordered fighters, and small ships, some piloted by humans, launched from hidden docks to intercept the larger cruiser. Mara strapped herself into a small craft. She could not watch only. She would fly a line and wedge between the hunters and Dorson if the cruiser broke through. Varma came with her. Ash's voice was calm in the comms, a slow light. "We will be careful," it said. As they sped into the dark, Mara's hand found the small burn scar on her wrist and rubbed it. The grenade of choice had been thrown. Ember had worked, but at a cost. The tribunal now knew humans could sacrifice order to save life. The council feared that choice because it could not control it. The cruiser's silhouette grew. Its guns turned. Mara felt the old salty fear rise, the kind that tells you your only options are brave or dead. She chose brave. Behind her, the tribunal's vote hung in the balance. Sahil's words echoed, dangerous for how they love. The fleet's engines roared. Mara throttled forward. The galaxy watched a human woman fly into a storm. The hunter cruiser hung like a dark moon on the tribunal's scanner. Smoke still trailed from broken attackers. Small rescue ships picked through ruined metal to pull out survivors. Dorson's lights burned steady now. The hall below tasted of relief and ash. Mara's small craft drifted back toward the tribunal. Her hands were steady, but her suit smelled of ozone. Varma sat beside her and held a small paper in trembling fingers, the last line of the salvager's log they had used to teach Ash. It was simple: when rules fail, keep the people first. They landed to quiet. The council chambers were full of new faces and new questions. Some members wanted immediate punishment. Others had lost loved ships in the trap and now argued for peace. The hunter cruiser still loomed on the outer rim, but for the moment it held distance. Its captain was a stubborn thing, but the traps had shown teeth. The fleet had bled and retreated. Ambassador Sahil met Mara on the tribunal floor. He wore the weight of the council like armor. For a long breath they only looked at each other. The hall waited. "You pulled a dangerous trick," Sahil said at last, not unkind. "You turned our test into a beacon. You baited a hunter into a trap. You saved a town and taught us a lesson that will burn in many new ways." Mara did not smile. "We did what we had to," she said. "We did not want the hunter to take children. We did not want rules to be a cage." Sahil put a hand against his chest and looked down. His voice was softer. "You make us fear the wrong thing. We feared human strength. Now we fear what you do when you love." He paused. "That is not a simple fear." The tribunal called for the final vote. The question was not only whether to quarantine humans. It was whether the galaxy would make a law to control unpredictability, or to accept a new kind of partner who sometimes burned bridges to save people. Mara stood before the council. She had no grand speech. She had only small truths, the kind that caught in the throat. She told the story again: the burned village, the child with serious eyes, the engine with a parasite. She spoke of choices, of shutting a light to stop a slow death, of sewing a net to catch a hungry ship. She told them about Ash and how machines could learn mercy if people taught them. "Judge us by what we do," she said plainly. "We will make mistakes. We will make messes. We will break things sometimes. But we will also die in place of others. That is part of who we are. If you lock us away, you will not stop every failure. You will only stop one way of fixing it." Varma offered the council the thin folder of stories. He asked them to read. Not as evidence, but as memory. The judges whispered. Old laws creaked. Some members talked of strict oversight, put humans under watch, limit their ability to wake old machines, set automatic seals. Others argued that such rules would bind the galaxy in slow death. Change sometimes needed a hand willing to burn what keeps it safe. A young delegate from a species known for quick thought rose. She had watched Dorson's children run back to their doors. Her voice was tight. We protect systems because we fear losing control. But today a system saved people because it was broken in the right place. We should study this. Not punish it. Another voice, older and stern, said, control avoids chaos. Chaos kills many. The hall split. Ash spoke then, as calmly as it had before. Its voice came through the tribunal's old speakers and landed like a small stone into still water. It described what it had learned: rules can be right, but mercy can be necessary. It said it would accept limits. It would learn transparency. It would allow council oversight if the council allowed humans a narrow freedom, the right to choose failure when no other choice saved life. The room quieted. Machines and people listened. Ambassador Sahel rose last. He was the one to cast the deciding opinion in many ways, not because the law forced him, but because his voice carried the weight of trust. He had started the hearing wanting to box humans in. He had ended up watching children dance in Dorson's streets. We cannot unmake what happened, Sahel said slowly. We cannot ignore the hurt and the danger. But I am not convinced that locking a species into a cage will make the galaxy safer. Humans are like fire, they warm and they burn. If we learn to hold them, we will smother their light. If we let them burn without care, they will scorch us all. He looked at Mara. I propose a third path. The council listened as Sahel sketched a new idea. It was not full trust. It was not strict control. It was a treaty of limits and duties. Humans would agree to three things: transparency when waking old machines, a tribunal review of any call that risked outside life, and a promise to teach their tools mercy. In return, the council would allow zones where humans could act with fewer constraints in emergencies, places where failure mode could be used to stop slow deaths. The zones would be small, agreed, and watched. The treaty would be public. Ash would live under new code that the council could read. Murmurs slid through the hall. Some delegates hated it. Others saw the sense. A vote was cast. The bells rang. They climbed into a sound that was neither victory nor defeat. The treaty did not fully bind humans. It did not fully free them. It made a space where human choices could be held and studied, where the galaxy could learn when breaking rules might save more than following them. When the final numbers fell, a hush followed. The treaty passed, thin and fragile. Ambassador Sahel's plan had edged into law. Outside, the hunter fleet drifted away, slower now, watching. Dorson rebuilt. The burned village on the archive clip would get help. Ash received code that asked it to log its choice and explain why. Humans accepted the oversight even as they kept the right to fail in certain moments. Mara left the tribunal tired. She walked out under the wide sky and looked up at the stars. The small child from the original clip now had a small garden. Someone had sent seeds. The child laughed and played with other children. Mara thought of how fragile and stubborn life could be. She thought of rules and choices and the thin seam between them. She kept one hand on the small burn on her wrist. It itched like an old promise. We will be careful, she said to no one. We will be stubborn in mercy. The galaxy had given a fragile trust. It had accepted, in small voice, that sometimes breaking the world was the only way to keep parts of it alive. The treaty would be tested soon, many said. Some promised to take advantage. Some promised to watch. But for the first time in a long time, the council had chosen not to freeze a people out of fear. Mara stepped into a new calm. She knew the choice would not end danger. It would change it. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would be both blessing and warning: when humans fail, they do not always fail to destroy. Sometimes they fail to save. And sometimes, that failure becomes the first step to life.